Hello, Black Bean Samson here. It is March 30th, 2018, about 4 o'clock. I'm usually done at 4:30 from work, except I still got another service call to take care of. So I'm on my way to do that. In the meantime, I got the gun craze in my head, the gun debate. Good old gun second bear arms amendment debate. So lately, it's been people who have always been like, we need better gun policies, we need better regulations, we need to have better background checks. And now it's turning into, we need to repeal the Second Amendment. And the latest excuse I've heard so far by Larry King. This is paraphrasing since I don't have it in front of me. Larry King tweeted out saying, the Second Amendment was only made to keep slaves in check. Gosh, how wrong Larry King is. You'd think after someone that's 80, 90 years old that he would have a good fine-tuned understanding of why it's important to have these rights. Especially someone who makes a living off of freedom of speech. I don't want to get into the whole Jewish part, but he is a Jew. To my knowledge, he is consider himself a Jewish heritage, which shocks me that he wants to get rid of guns. I mean, it shocks me anytime I hear the Jews want to remove guns from people. That's exactly what happened during Germany of the mid-30s. Actually made laws specifically for Jews not to allow to own guns and stuff. I mean, who cares if it's Jews or if it's just plain people? That word. If you take that word and change it, who cares? It does not matter. What matters is that this is your human right, or God-given right, or your nature-given right, is to defend yourself at all costs with anything that you can achieve on getting or making for yourself. It is astonishing. Well, it's not astonishing. It's a shocker that there's so many people out there who think guns are the actual problem. Needless to say, a great majority of these people have never, ever shot a gun, let alone ever even laid a hand on a gun. Which I have a serious problem with that. I have a serious problem. Could you imagine having a group or even a big group that never drove, never did anything, but yet laid all these rules on how you could and can't drive? You know damn well they'd make some of the most stupidest rules, because the fact is they don't know how to drive. They never drove. So how would they understand what they're really trying to force upon people? It's like this new modern progressivism is definitely a step back. I mean, literally, there's nations out there that don't have, well, to my knowledge, America's the only country that has the right to bear arms, the right to defend yourself from potential danger in a potential tyrannical government. That's the whole point of a well-regulated militia through the civilians. Like, there's no other place like that in the world. There's no other place like this in America. I mean, America is such a unique place for individual rights. And I would argue it's really fundamentally because of the first two amendments, which is why, First Amendment is our freedom of speech. What protects our freedom of speech? The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. That is what protects our Second Amendment. Our First Amendment. Because throughout history, we have seen that when people speak out with truth, they're attacked, brutalized, defamed, assaulted, murdered, everything you could think of in the book. Almost every great mind that's ever spoke truth has a rough demise. It is so true. I mean, especially like Socrates and Voltaire, just the two off the top of my head. And there's plenty of more. And now these days, if you just speak out anything from data points to logical consistencies, man, are they just buckle down and just stick to their ideologies and false narratives, and man, they sure do attack. People don't like being proven wrong, and when you can prove people wrong and they know they're wrong, they lash out at times. They sure do lash out. So, last couple of days, there's been a little gun debate on Facebook. There's been a whole lot, but between some people that someone I know, and then whoever that's on their posting there, and I see this argument a lot. It's always, the guns that we have nowadays are not anywhere near the same type of guns that were back in the day, like muskets, single loaded compared to 30 round magazines. Well, again, let's apply standards to all this. You're right, they didn't expect that. What they did expect was a balance of power. So as the government's able to handle these weapons, so should the citizens. Well regulated. Again, I'm fine with it being regulated, but once you remove the option of me able to have these guns, these weapons, you are constitutionally going against my rights. I'm not even discussing about my natural rights, or in some people's cases, God-given right. The right up for us to defend ourselves at any cost, with any form that we can achieve without inflicting force onto someone else, unless it's due to threat to us. So they hold this argument that because an M16 can shoot off thousands of rounds within a few minutes, that somehow that doesn't fit our Constitution. And I'm like, I might have been okay with that, but our government has those same type of weapons. And I'm for balance of power. Let's keep consistency. If they get to have it, we get to have it. This is consistency. Alright? Second, if we apply that standard, we must apply it to all constitutional amendments, which would be the worst thing ever, because the original intentions of the Constitution were not intended to be reformed or manipulated or interpreted in special ways. It is what it is. The rights to bear arms, for a well-regulated militia. And the idea of the whole Constitution itself was a way to have a balance of power. It's like interesting, like the Senate can't really tell what the Congress to do, and so the Congress can't really tell what the Senate to do. It's kind of like that. I look at it as our government can't really tell us what we should be or can do with our amendments, and just as well as that, we can't really force our government to change laws. It has to be voted in, and casting votes, and hopefully there's enough votes to have things change. There's a balance of power, and that's very necessary. And with people who want to limit our Second Amendment to people who want to straight up repeal our Second Amendment, they simply forget that the idea of the Constitution was for balance of power. And when you remove such rights away, it gives total off balance. You tips the scale in favor of whoever has the most power. And in fact, once they have all that power, try getting it back. I don't know about you, but throughout history, it's never been an easy task, and it's always resulted in a lot of bloodshed, which is something that, man, oh man, I wish it does not happen. The more and more of these, it seems like communism. Communistic people, Marxist people, socialist people, people on the left, democratic people. I mean, they really are pushing it towards that way. And then you have Republicans who aren't even saying a word. I would argue they're complicit in it. It's like they're looking forward to having a whole government change, a regime change. Like, not presidential regime change, but a whole governmental regime change. I don't know what that sounds to you guys, but that sounds to me as some 1930s shit. Where when Adolf Hitler got in and fundamentally did a governmental regime change. And again, he removed people's rights to do many things. Took a lot of freedoms away. And freedoms from very special groups, for certain groups. And there's so many parallels of what's happening now to what happened back then, or what happened in the past in several areas. That's mind-blowing on how professors and the scholars that study history and that are not like blatantly being like, what the fuck is wrong with you, college? Or what the fuck is wrong with you, educators? Or what the fuck is wrong with you, parents that are teaching your kids false narratives that you can just simply look up in a history book or go into your nearest library and find some type of book on certain countries to see their war times, or maybe there's a book purely on war. It's just simple. These people who push these propaganda never have something to really back them up. So there's one point of history, there's 2 points of history that I'm going to speak of why historically it's good for Americans to have gun rights. I'm going to speak about first is Cambodia. I can't remember the time dates off the top of my head, it's not in front of me, but the Cambodia genocide. What I do remember is that they removed people's rights to own guns. And once they confiscated all the guns from the villages and from the groups and whatnot, they persisted on murdering a whole bunch of people. And in return, people believe and estimate between 1.5 to 3 million people were murdered within like 4 or 5 years. Very shortly after they lost their rights to buy guns. Somehow, people just really want to forget that stuff. They really want to forget that those situations have happened. It's like they don't care about their kids. It's like they don't care about their kids. In fact, they don't care about their kids. Well, the ones that do are the ones that are out there advocating to keep our rights, and then there's ones out there who are advocating to have our rights removed. It's really interesting. They have the right to, protest freely, and they use that right. At the same time, they use that right to literally lose their rights for other things that could protect them. See, freedom of speech is a form of protection. You can speak the truth and tell things that are happening within the world to shed light on it that can make you a potential hero or save people or save a nation. But no, that's not what they want. The second story, not even so much the situation, was back right after World War II. And it was in the mid-40s, if I remember right. And I believe it was Athens, Tennessee, if I'm correct. Or it might be even Athens, Kentucky. Yeah, it's just one of those like southern states there. Athens, something. I think it might have been Athens, Tennessee. But anyways, during the war, some soldiers went on leave. They went back to their hometown and they were murdered. Now, why they were murdered, I don't have the answers to that. But what I do know is that didn't appease too many soldiers that were overseas, and those were their comrades, those brothers. And when the war was over, all the men would turn back to their town to find out why their brothers were murdered. And they were murdered unjustly, to one of my memory. And they see all this corruption that was happening in the town. So all the soldiers got together and tried to vote the people out. Well, instead of having a fair, non-violent, peaceful voting, the sheriff and whoever that was, city council or whatever part of that town, government people of that town, decided to bring in, I think it was like 200 police officers or something like that. And they brought them down to the poll to intimidate voters who were going to vote the sheriff and whoever that was part of the government right the fuck out. So what did the sheriff do? Sheriff thought it was his purpose to make sure that the voting thing was done correctly, so he went in, took the voting poll away from the people and brought it back to his station, and then tried to persist on counting the vote there. Now, do you think these people were okay with a corrupt sheriff who was either okay or complicit or just known about the murders of the fellow soldiers? They didn't allow that to happen. It happened in a sense, but they put a stop to it. So what the bunch of those soldiers did, got together, went down, circled the sheriff place, and released hell with guns. They shot and shot and shot through all this gun. Let me tell you, through all this gun shooting, not one death was reported, which to me is just insane that no one was murdered or at least killed during the combat. That really tells you, I think my personal opinion is it really tells you that the soldiers, the ex-soldiers who returned, didn't want to kill, but they wanted these people to be removed. So they removed those people. And they would never have been able to do that if they didn't have the rights to bear arms, because these sheriff bared their arms. See, that's the issue. And then people want to, and okay, so those are the two stories. So to why people want to somehow equate that, because government is big as it is, and they have all this missile technology, all this shit, these drones and that's what they're going to use on us. Well, perhaps they might. But the fact is that in the meantime, I want to be able to defend myself from that perpetrator, which could be a officer that's trying to illegally do something, or a group of officers that's trying to do something to another group of people, like the whole Athens, Tennessee situation. Like, they're very corrupt people they have murdered people, and they've tried to forge the voting system in their favor. So those are great examples, I think, just two good examples upon hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands of more good examples. Because keep in mind, the AR-15, a handgun, are vastly different on what is used mostly in crimes. Handguns are vastly more used in gun crimes than a AR-15, but yet they're going after AR-15s as like AR-15s have caused just as much, if not double, triple, quadruple death rates than a other hand type of gun that shoots out one bullet at a time, or shoots off 4 or 5 bullets per 5 minutes, because it takes damn near a minute just to pack and reload a musket gun. So my next argument towards all that is a pretty simple one. It's a pretty simple one. It's the one I do tend to use. It's laying a consistent standard through all our amendments. But I'm going to just do it with First Amendment and the Second Amendment, because the First Amendment and the Second Amendment are continuously being undermined and attacked and attacked and attacked. Guns back then were not designed in a way to shoot off thousands of bullets in a few minutes. They were muskets. They shot off one bullet pretty much per minute. And that's if you were a professional gun shooter and you knew exactly how to pack it and load it. Where now we have guns that can shoot off thousands and thousands of bullets. A lot different than what the forefathers probably could ever imagine at the time. Because Gatling gun didn't really come out until like the late 1800s. So long after the Constitution was made. And even then you had to crank it. And it was not at all accurate. Because the bullets would warp the piping and everything. But anyhow, if their standard, if their logic is that, then they must as well feel like they can only post one posting per day or per hour or however you want to look at it, because that's become subjective. Because it could potentially hurt people. Then one of their other arguments would be, well, words don't kill people. Well, they do actually. It's just that you don't have the power to use words that powerful. The people that have that ability are people within government that convince people to go to war, where thousands of people will spend their life to end it there. They spend their life to hopefully bring some type of solidarity to the world through America. It's a very interesting time now, because if you could take a step back, you can literally see Western civilization, America, on a teeter-totter. And they're essentially right in the middle. And one side's essentially for freedom, and the other side is for safety. And so many people are tipping the scale for safety and thinking that if something bad was to happen, government there is there to protect you. Government people are right around the corner to make sure that the gunman, the stabber, the acid attacker, the just violent whoever is subdued. But the fact is we know, even with all the money that we funnel into the police academy and the police themselves, this is not the case. This is not the case. So now, people will even use the excuse, if you try to bring up freedom of speech and you use that as consistency, well, they're like, well, there's free speech zones and there's regulated speech to where you can't have hate speech and stuff. Well, I'm pretty sure that's not all true, but I do know it's true where if you say hate speech and stuff and then you go and turn around and hurt someone, you could be charged with a hate crime. But beyond that, I can say whatever damn thing I really want about any culture or gender within America, and it fits the freedom of speech. The idea of that is so you can bring and shed light onto the people who bring chaos and disorder to their borders or within their borders. Now, I'm not sure if these groups that advocate for gun removal are protected by guards and whatnot with handguns. But the fact is that if these guard people are allowed to have guns too as well, then we as me deserve the right to have a gun as well. For one instance, protection, defense, the Second Amendment. So one thing is for certain too. The groups out there that are really advocating for the removal of gun rights, or the ones that are saying, oh, we just need it, some things change to it. Well, their real intention is to keep on changing it, to whittle it down to nothing. So when they go, oh, look at it, it's not really worth anything, and everybody's all like, yeah, because, none of us can own guns because of how strict their laws are, they'll just completely reform it to where no one can have a gun besides the state. Now, again, throughout history, time and time again, we can see that is an extremely lost cause to a civilization. Because once you remove the rights that allow it to protect itself, it will only undermine itself. So I'm not sure what America's going to look like in the next 10 years or so. But on the track that we're going, if Trump doesn't really pull some rabbits out of his hat, some really cool tricks, there's a huge chance that the America that we know, love, and appreciate will not be for the same for our children. In fact, that's already being done in cities. Children in cities they're usually traumatized based off the fact that their parents are never home. And at the same time, the majority of the time we're growing up are around other children who speak really bad or don't have any rationality behind what they do. So I'm going to leave this here. And I'm going to paraphrase Stefan Molyneux. He came up with a really good quote. All people who want to repeal or make it tougher to own a gun, their essential argument is that because people are not morally right, they're not morally just, which is why they commit crimes. They're just people who lack moral. Which is a very dumb argument when you can actually sit back and tally up how many deaths have been done through what exactly is happening within our country now. It's not going to look pretty once we remove this heroin, if we ever get a chance to remove this heroin from people. You know, when things are going so well, you don't start to really pay attention to all the issues that you made in the past. It becomes hard to reflect. If someone has one of those on-demand water heaters and that, comment down below, please. So, it's not going to be a pretty time in the next few years. This country is either going to get divided, or things are going to happen that are really, really rough, which I don't want to see. But it will have to be done if people don't shape up.